In the quiet expanse of the galaxy, a treaty had stood for 3,000 years, holding together hundreds of alien species under the rule of the Galactic Peace Council. It was a time of unity, collaboration, and prosperity. Species once known for their violent histories had set aside their differences. Humanity had played its part in this peace, earning respect for their rapid growth and technological wonders. No one had ever doubted that the peace would last. But everything changed on a seemingly ordinary day when the Volier, a proud and militaristic species, broke the silence. From their towering ships, the Volier leader, General Korath, issued a declaration to the galaxy. We, the Volier, hereby withdraw from the peace treaty. We can no longer stand by and allow humanity's technological advancements to grow unchecked. The time for war has come. Across the galaxy, gasps filled the air as the announcement echoed through space. The Peace Council was shaken. The Volier had always been a species that believed in power and conquest, their history filled with battles that shaped entire star systems. For them, the peace had always been a source of discomfort. They felt that the galaxy had grown too complacent, too weak. They believed it was time to prove their dominance. In council chambers, representatives from species like the gentle Skarn and the mind-bending Scythian species exchanged worried glances. The Volier had made their move, and it was clear they intended to make a statement. But the Volier were not alone in their concerns. Many feared that humanity's rapid rise in technology had made them a potential threat to the balance of power. Humanity, with their inventions of energy shields, AI-driven ships, and terraforming technology, were seen as a wild card, a species that could easily become too powerful if left unchecked. But humanity's leaders, President Harathorn, a calm and thoughtful diplomat, wasn't worried. She had spent years fostering trust among the galaxy's diverse species. Her voice rang out over the holo-conference as she addressed the Galactic Council. The Volier may choose to break the peace, but they will find humanity to be a challenge of a different kind. We do not fight in the ways they expect. We fight with creativity, with intelligence, and above all, with humor. Her words seemed out of place to many of the Council's members. How could laughter and creativity stand against the might of the Volier war machines? Back on Earth, the response was even more unexpected. News channels across the planet flashed the Volier's declaration in bold red letters. Social media platforms erupted into waves of memes, jokes, and reactions that could only be described as an expression of disbelief. They want to fight us. That's cute, one post read, with a video of a human astronaut doing a slow-motion backflip in a zero-gravity chamber. These guys have no idea who they're messing with. The memes were everywhere, humorous, clever, and sarcastic. Humans were laughing at the very idea of war. In every corner of the globe, from quiet villages to bustling cities, the general feeling was one of amusement rather than fear. In the heart of New York City, a group of teenagers gathered around a holographic screen in a crowded park, their faces illuminated by the glow of the news. "This is insane," said Jason, a young engineer. "They really think they can take us down. Just look at their ships. They're massive, but slow. We've got tech they can't even dream of. I bet they haven't seen what we've been up to," added Maya, a software developer. "We've been developing these stealth drones for years. They'll never even see us coming." A few blocks away, in the United Nations headquarters, diplomats and military advisors scrambled to assess the Volier's capabilities. But they, too, were calm. They'd seen this kind of thing before, albeit on a smaller scale. Other species had once threatened humanity's peaceful existence, only to be met with innovative solutions that rendered their weapons ineffective. Humans had a way of thinking outside the box, and it often made their enemies look foolish. General Korath, however, was not amused by the reaction he was seeing. From the bridge of his warship, he scowled at the reports of human laughter spreading across the galaxy. "How dare they mock us?" he muttered, slamming his fist against his command chair. The Volier had no intention of backing down. They were going to show humanity just how serious they were. But even as the Voliere prepared their invasion plans, the humans remained unfazed. In fact, some seemed downright cheerful about it. This wasn't a time for fear. For humanity, this was a time for action, creativity, and most importantly, laughter. The Voliere may have been big and powerful, but they were about to learn just how different humanity's way of fighting really was. And so, as the Voliere ships moved closer to their target, the people of Earth prepared, not for war, but for a lesson in what true strength really meant. They weren't scared. In fact, they were already making plans for a very different kind of conflict. It was about to be a very interesting and strange war, and humanity was going to enjoy every moment of it. The story of humanity's rise to galactic prominence was not one of violent conquest or bloodshed. It was one of rapid, mind-bending innovation. In just a few centuries, humans went from sending small, unassuming rockets into the void to creating spacecraft that could bend the laws of physics and travel vast distances across the stars. It wasn't just their technological advancements that earned them respect among the galactic species. It was the very way they thought. From their first meeting with the galactic community, humanity had stunned other species. It had been a simple encounter, but one that left a lasting impression. A group of human diplomats, led by President Hara Thorn, had been invited to the Galactic Peace Council to discuss humanity's place among the stars. In the Grand Hall of the Council, as representatives of various species, some composed of liquid forms, others with multiple minds in a single body, looked on, humanity's approach was refreshingly direct. "We are a species of innovation," President Thorn had said in her speech. "We don't shy away from challenges, we solve them. We understand that cooperation is essential to growth, and we are committed to working with you all to create a peaceful, prosperous galaxy." What struck the Council was how quickly humanity had embraced the vast knowledge of the galaxy's older species. The humans didn't try to prove themselves as the best or most advanced. Instead, they asked questions. They learned. In return, they shared their own discoveries, ideas that helped solve problems that had eluded even the wisest of the galaxy's civilizations. Their AI systems were sophisticated beyond anything other species had seen, yet they used them not for war, but for exploration and understanding. Over the years, humanity had earned the trust of their neighbors. They worked with the peaceful Everan species, developing new methods of energy generation that were now used by countless planets. They had helped the peaceful Valar race design terraforming technology, turning barren planets into thriving ecosystems. The humans, with their boundless curiosity and problem-solving abilities, had become known as the galaxy's innovators. They weren't conquerors, they were creators. But in the shadows, not everyone was so welcoming. Some species feared humanity's rise. The Voliere, in particular, were growing uneasy. The Voliere had always prided themselves on their military strength and their ability to conquer others. It was their nature to see the galaxy as something to be controlled, not something to be shared. And they saw humanity's rapid advancements as a direct challenge to that belief. The Voliere had been watching humans closely. They had noted the impressive space stations humanity had constructed around Earth and Mars. They had observed the creation of self-sustaining colonies on distant moons. The Voliere had seen humanity's work with artificial intelligence, their spacefaring ships, and their ability to manipulate energy fields. But most concerning of all was humanity's ability to solve problems quickly, almost too quickly. No matter what challenge the galaxy faced, humanity seemed to come up with a solution before anyone else. In the eyes of the Voliere, humanity's innovations were a threat. They believed that no species should be allowed to rise so rapidly, especially not one as young as humanity. They began to question the wisdom of the Galactic Peace Council. Had it been too lenient on humanity? Had it allowed a potential rival to grow unchecked? These doubts festered in the minds of the Voliere leadership until, finally, they took action. They saw themselves as the galaxy's true rulers and believed it was time to restore balance by putting humanity in its place. General Korath, the leader of the Voliere, had always been a man of action. He had no patience for diplomacy or peaceful talks. He believed that the strongest should rule, and for that reason, he had been preparing for war long before he made his announcement. In his eyes, humanity's role in the galaxy was clear. They were to be kept in check, and the only way to do that was to challenge them head-on. Back on Earth, however, no one seemed to share his concerns. As the news of the Volier's declaration spread, people on the streets of every major city laughed. The idea that an alien species could threaten Earth's existence seemed laughable. "Do they not know who we are?" was a common reaction. Social media exploded with memes poking fun at the Volier. Humans, it seemed, were more amused than worried. The diplomatic channels were full of messages from other species. The Skarn, a peaceful race of energy beings, were curious. "Why aren't you concerned?" they asked the humans. "The Volier are a mighty force. They could destroy your colonies with ease." Humanity's response was simple, and it came from a place of pride and confidence. "We've faced challenges before," President Thorne said during a broadcast, "and we've always come out stronger. The Volier may have strength, but we have something they don't: creativity, adaptability, and a sense of humor." It wasn't just talk. Humanity's strength lay in their ability to think differently, to solve problems with the kinds of solutions no one had ever imagined. In their laboratories and workshops, engineers and scientists were already developing technologies that would make even the Volier's most fearsome weapons seem obsolete. And that was the key. Humanity had never been about raw power or aggression. They had no need to conquer. What they had, instead, was the ability to think beyond the limits of what the galaxy thought possible. They could create solutions that didn't just solve problems. They made the impossible seem easy. So, as the Volier prepared to strike, humanity simply waited, not with fear, but with confidence. The Volier would soon learn that the greatest power of all was not strength, but the ability to think in ways that no one could predict. As the Volier prepared for war, their military forces gathered in the depths of space, waiting for their moment to strike. Their ships, massive and imposing, hovered at the edges of human colonies on Mars and Jupiter's moons. The Volier had always relied on their sheer strength to win battles, and they believed their overwhelming firepower would be enough to crush humanity's defenses. But what they hadn't counted on was the strange reaction they'd gotten from Earth. Humans weren't scared. In fact, they were treating the whole thing like a joke. General Korath paced the command deck of his flagship, Vraxath, his claws clicking against the cold metal floor. His expression was a mix of frustration and anger. The Volier were a proud race, and this mockery from the humans was something he could not tolerate. Their peaceful exterior was a facade, Korath told himself. They had no idea what true strength was. They had no idea what the Volier were capable of. "They're laughing at us," Korath growled to his officers. "They think we're a joke. But once we strike, they will understand our power." His officers nodded, though some of them were starting to feel uneasy. They had seen the reports from Earth, news stories filled with human laughter, memes, and jokes. It was hard to believe that a species capable of such rapid technological advancement could be so carefree. But Korath's orders were clear, and the Volier would not back down. They decided to target the human colonies on Mars first. The Red Planet had long been home to a growing human settlement, a place where Earth's scientists and engineers were experimenting with terraforming and sustainability technologies. The Volier believed that if they could capture Mars, they could strike a serious blow to human morale. Once Mars fell, the other colonies would follow. The Volier fleet approached Mars, their ships cutting through the void of space like knives. They were confident in their strategy, prepared to land on the planet and quickly take control. But as their ships entered Mars orbit, they found nothing. "Where are the human defenses?" one of the Volier commanders asked, his voice filled with confusion. "There should be orbital stations, weapons platforms, satellites," another officer said. "But there's nothing." The Volier had expected to face a strong resistance from humanity. After all, Mars was one of Earth's most important colonies, filled with valuable resources and cutting-edge research. But instead of defenses, they found emptiness. As the fleet moved closer, they began to realize that Mars was strangely quiet. The surface was dotted with human structures, domes, and research facilities, but there were no signs of life. No soldiers, no spaceports, no defensive installations. It was as if the humans had simply abandoned the planet. "What is going on?" Korath demanded, his frustration growing. "Where are the humans?" Little did the Volier know, the humans had been waiting. They had known the Volier would come to Mars, and they had prepared for it in the most unexpected way. The human response to the Volier invasion was not to fight head-on, but to watch, observe, and learn. In the command center of the Human Defense Force on Earth, President Hara Thorne sat at a round table surrounded by top strategists and engineers. "We knew they would come from Mars first," she said, a calm smile on her face. "They'll expect to find us in our usual places, our spaceports, our stations. But we've moved everything. We've emptied out Mars, and they'll be so busy searching for us, they won't even know what hit them." While the Volier focused on Mars, humanity's fleet lay hidden in the outer reaches of the solar system, beyond the reach of the Volier sensors. The human ships had been designed for stealth, equipped with advanced cloaking technology and untraceable communication systems. The Volier sensors, though powerful, were no match for the ingenuity of human engineers. "They'll think they've won," President Thorne continued, "but we're not interested in a direct battle. We'll use our technology to disrupt them, to frustrate them. And by the time they realize they've been outwitted, we'll have the upper hand." Back on Mars, the Volier began their search in earnest. They landed troops on the barren plains, expecting to find human resistance. But there was nothing. The settlements were empty. The research labs were abandoned. The airlocks to underground bunkers remained sealed. The Volier sent down patrols to explore every inch of the surface, but they found no human soldiers, no weapons, no defenses. Korath's anger only grew. "They must be hiding," he said, gritting his teeth. "They're trying to lure us into a trap. Keep searching." But the more they searched, the more they found only silence. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity watched the entire operation unfold. They saw the Volier troops land on Mars, only to wander through empty buildings and abandoned laboratories. And instead of taking action, they did nothing. They didn't fire a single shot. They didn't launch a single missile. The entire situation became a spectacle for the humans. They were playing a game, not of war, but of wits. And as the Volier continued to search, the humans couldn't help but laugh. They had won before the battle had even started. As the Volier troops scoured Mars, they remained unaware of the real plan humanity had set in motion. The humans were not interested in fighting a traditional battle, with ships and soldiers clashing in space. They were playing a different kind of game, a game where cleverness and misdirection would outsmart the Volier at every turn. On Earth, President Hara Thorne stood before a massive holographic map of the solar system. The map displayed not just the positions of Earth's military assets, but also the movements of the Volier fleet. Her team had been monitoring the Volier's every move, and the information was flowing in real time. They knew exactly what the Volier were doing, and they were ready to turn it to their advantage. "We've got them right where we want them," Hara said, a confident smile on her face. Her strategist, Captain Lyra Zhao, nodded in agreement. "They're focused on Mars, searching for us, and we've made sure they won't find anything. While they waste time on a fruitless hunt, we're setting up our next move." The plan was simple but brilliant. Keep the Volier distracted long enough to make them believe they had outsmarted humanity. Then, once their resources were spread thin, humanity would strike in ways the Volier would never expect. But the key to their success lay in keeping the Volier busy and overextended. If the Volier were forced to chase shadows, they would never realize what was coming. Across the solar system, humanity's fleet had taken up strategic positions, far beyond the reach of the Voliere sensors. These ships were not designed for direct combat. They were designed for something far more effective: disruption. Each ship was equipped with advanced electromagnetic pulses, EMPs, capable of disabling any electronics in the immediate area. The idea was not to destroy the Voliere ships, but to leave them helpless, floating in space, unable to function. And for the Voliere, this would be an unfamiliar challenge. Once we start using the EMPs, Captain Zhao explained, they won't be able to track our ships, communicate with their fleet, or use their advanced targeting systems. We'll turn their technology into junk. At the same time, other teams of engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to deploy a series of decoy satellites around Mars. These satellites were equipped with holographic projectors capable of mimicking the signatures of human spacecraft. The Voliere would believe they had found the human fleet, only to realize they were chasing a mirage. Meanwhile, President Thorne stood at the Central Command Center, watching the situation unfold on a massive screen. The Voliere, as expected, were growing frustrated. They had found nothing on Mars, and now their sensors were starting to pick up strange readings, signals that didn't quite match the expected patterns of human technology. Their ships moved toward the decoys, and the holograms began to flicker to life. The Voliere fleet started to change course, drawn by the false signals. As they moved closer, they began to fire warning shots at the decoy satellites. The explosions sent up clouds of debris, but there was no human resistance to speak of. The Voliere were simply firing at shadows. In the midst of the chaos, Hara couldn't help but smile. She knew the Voliere were beginning to doubt themselves. Every time they thought they had cornered humanity, they were met with nothing but empty space and false signals. The Voliere were losing their focus, and humanity was gaining ground. But even as the Voliere became more frustrated, General Koreth refused to give up. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vraxath, staring at the holographic displays in front of him. His officers tried to reassure him, but Koreth could feel the tide turning against them. "They're hiding something," Koreth muttered, his voice low. "We've been searching for hours, and still no sign of them. This isn't just a strategy. This is a trap. They're trying to wear us down." He ordered his fleet to abandon Mars and regroup. It was clear the humans weren't going to make this easy. They weren't throwing their forces at him head-on. Instead, they were making the Voliere chase ghosts. Koreth had spent his entire life studying the art of war, and yet he couldn't figure out what the humans were planning. Their movements were unpredictable, and their technology was unlike anything he had ever encountered. As the Voliere regrouped, still uncertain of their next move, the humans continued to operate in the shadows. No direct confrontation, no dramatic battles, just clever, quiet disruption. The Voliere couldn't understand why humans weren't using their ships or their weapons to fight back. It was as if they weren't taking the war seriously. But that was exactly what the humans wanted. The Voliere's arrogance, their assumption that brute force would win, had blinded them to the true nature of the human approach. The more the Voliere stumbled, the more they realized how little they understood about their opponents. And as they scrambled to figure out what was really going on, the humans, with their creativity and technological ingenuity, were already moving closer to their next move. "We've got them right where we want them," Hara Thorne said, watching the Voliere struggle from her command center. "The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you underestimate humanity." The Voliere had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Their fleet, once organized and filled with confidence, was becoming fragmented. The continuous chase of decoys, the strange disruptions to their communications, and the overall confusion were starting to take a toll on their morale. It seemed that every time they thought they had figured out humanity's strategy, they were hit with another surprise. The humans had created a masterful game of hide and seek, and the Voliere were losing. Back on Earth, President Hara Thorne knew that the time for distractions was almost over. Humanity had successfully drawn the Voliere out, and now it was time to strike. but not in the way the Voliere expected. Humanity had no intention of fighting the Voliere head-on. They didn't need to. They had already proven that their ability to think, to adapt, and to outwit their enemies was their greatest strength. "Captain Zhao," Hara said, turning to her strategist, "it's time. We've drawn them in, and they're getting too close to realizing our true plan. Let's begin Phase 2. Zhao, a sharp-minded officer with a deep understanding of tactics, smiled. "Understood, President. We've got the Voliere exactly where we want them. They've wasted too many resources chasing shadows." The plan was simple but effective. While the Voliere were distracted by the false readings and decoys, humanity had been quietly gathering its strength. In a secluded sector of the solar system, a fleet of human ships had been stationed, hidden from the Voliere sensors. These ships were equipped with the latest human technology, and they were about to show the Voliere just how outmatched they truly were. The first phase of humanity's plan had been to get the Voliere to waste their time and resources. Now, with their focus scattered, humanity was ready to deploy a weapon that the Voliere had never even considered: advanced quantum disruptors. Quantum disruptors were the next step in humanity's technological evolution. They had developed these devices in secret, and now they were ready for use. These disruptors were capable of altering the fabric of space-time itself, creating temporary rifts that could disable enemy ships without causing direct damage. The Voliere, with their reliance on advanced technology, would find themselves completely powerless. "We've got one shot at this," Captain Zhao said as the quantum disruptors were activated on the human ships. "Let's make it count." The human fleet, cloaked and undetected, began to move into position. The first target was the Vraxeth, General Korath's flagship. It was the heart of the Voliere's command, and taking it out would send a clear message. The Voliere had been chasing shadows, but now, humanity was about to reveal its true power. As the human ships approached the Voliere fleet, the quantum disruptors activated. The first rift opened in the fabric of space near the Vraxeth, and the Voliere fleet immediately felt the effects. Systems began to fail. Communication lines were severed. Shields flickered and failed. The Voliere had no idea what was happening. They had never encountered anything like this before. "Report," Korath shouted, his voice filled with panic. "We're losing power. The engines are failing." One of his officers cried out, "We can't control the ship." Korath's face twisted in confusion and rage. "What is this? What have they done?" On the ground, the humans could only watch as their plan unfolded perfectly. The Voliere, in their state of disarray, scrambled to regain control of their fleet. But it was too late. The quantum disruptors had done their work. The Vraxeth, once a symbol of the Voliere's might, was now floating in space, completely disabled. The human ships didn't stop there. One by one, the quantum disruptors were deployed, creating rifts in space-time that disabled the Voliere ships across the fleet. The Voliere, once so confident in their power, now found themselves utterly helpless. Their weapons, their sensors, their shields, everything had failed them. On Earth, the mood shifted. What had started as a game of misdirection had now turned into a clear victory. Humanity had taken the first step toward reclaiming control of their future. The Voliere had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's creativity, their ability to think beyond the traditional rules of warfare. President Thorne watched the events unfold on her screen. The Voliere were floundering, their once great fleet now in disarray. She turned to Captain Zhao. "It's done. The Voliere won't be able to fight back. Their arrogance blinded them to the fact that humanity's greatest weapon isn't force, it's intelligence." Captain Zhao smiled, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "They thought they could crush us with their power. They never saw us coming." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, General Korath was seething with rage. His fleet, the pride of the Voliere, had been shattered in a matter of hours. The humans had taken no prisoners. They had simply outsmarted him at every turn. And now he was left with nothing but a broken fleet and a growing sense of humiliation. As Korath stood on the bridge of the Vraxeth, watching the chaos around him, he realized the truth. The Volier had never truly understood their opponents. They had relied on brute force, on fear, and on overwhelming strength. But in the end, it was humanity's ability to think, to innovate, and to adapt that had won the day. And that was a lesson the Volier would never forget. The once mighty Volier fleet had been reduced to floating hulks in space, crippled by humanity's ingenious quantum disruptors. Their communication systems were down. Their weapons and shields were useless. And now, General Korath was left with only one option: retreat. But even as he gave the order to withdraw, he knew that this was no ordinary defeat. This was humiliation. On Earth, President Hara Thorne and her team watched with quiet satisfaction as the Volier struggled to regain their footing. It had been a long, difficult road, but the humans had done what seemed impossible. They had outsmarted a much stronger enemy. Now it was time to finish what they had started. "Captain Zhao," Hara said, her voice steady, "prepare for the final phase. Let's make sure the Volier understand that this war was never about fighting us. It was about understanding us." Zhao nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. "We've played our hand carefully. Now it's time to finish the job." The plan was simple. The Volier might have been crippled in space, but they were not entirely defeated. The human fleet, though not as large, had proven its superiority in strategy and technology. Now, humanity would take the fight to the heart of the Volier, striking where they least expected it, their command center on the planet Volier Prime. While the Volier were distracted and disorganized, humanity would launch a final strike, but not with bombs or missiles. The humans had learned from the Volier. Brute force was not the answer. Instead, they would deliver a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The plan to reach Volier Prime was as daring as it was brilliant. Humanity would send a small fleet of stealth ships, disguised as Volier transports, deep into Volier space. These ships would infiltrate the heart of the Volier Empire, a place where the Volier thought they were safe, beyond the reach of any outside forces. "We'll get close enough to their command center," Captain Zhao explained, "and then we'll broadcast a message that tells them exactly why they lost." The message wasn't one of hate, nor was it one of anger. It wasn't even a message of war. It was a message of understanding, of clarity. Humanity wasn't just fighting to defend their own world. They were fighting for something greater: the right to be respected, to be seen as equals in the vastness of the universe. The Volier, with all their strength and power, had never understood that. They had believed that might made right. But humanity had shown them that it was intelligence, creativity, and resilience that truly mattered. As the stealth ships approached Volier Prime, the tension among the crew was palpable. They were about to deliver the most important message in human history. The Volier wouldn't know what hit them. The quiet hum of the stealth ship's engines was the only sound, the only indication of the human fleet's approach. Back on Earth, President Thorne addressed the world. "We've fought, we've struggled, and we've learned. But now we show the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated. This is our message to the Volier and to every species out there who thinks they can look down on humanity. We are not weak. We are not to be ignored." The Volier, completely unaware of the human fleet closing in, were still struggling to regain control of their shattered fleet. General Korath paced the bridge of the Vraxeth, trying to piece together a plan of action. He had called for reinforcements from Volier Prime, but those reinforcements were still days away, and the humans were already making their final move. As the stealth ships neared Volier Prime, their cloaking devices rendered them invisible to the Volier sensors. The human fleet slipped past the defenses of Volier Prime unnoticed. Once they were in position, they activated a single transmission. A message broadcast across the Volier's communication channels, loud and clear. The message was simple, yet profound. "We are humanity. We are not your enemies. but we will no longer be silent. This is the price of underestimating us." As the message echoed throughout the Volir's vast empire, General Korath's heart sank. He had expected a strike, a battle, a final act of war. But this was something different. The humans had shown that they were capable of far more than just survival. They had shown that they could challenge the very foundations of the Volir's arrogance. On Volir Prime, the Council of Leaders watched the broadcast in stunned silence. They had expected a typical human response, desperate and futile. Instead, they saw a species that had learned, adapted, and risen to meet the challenge. The Volir were not used to this kind of response, and for the first time in centuries, they felt a sense of doubt creeping into their hearts. General Korath, one of his officers, said, his voice shaking, "The humans, they've proven they can defeat us, not with force, but with their minds." Korath's eyes narrowed. He had known that the humans were capable of great things, but this was something else entirely. They had turned the tide of the war, not with weapons, but with something far more powerful, the truth. And as Korath stood in the ruins of his fleet, staring at the screen showing the final message, he realized that the Volir had lost, not because they were weak, but because they had misunderstood humanity completely. The message humanity had sent was not just heard by the Volir, it reverberated across the galaxy. In the days that followed, the leaders of many alien species watched the broadcast in stunned silence, feeling the weight of the words. The Volir, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had been humbled by a species they had long underestimated, and the humans, who had faced countless challenges, had proven that they were not to be ignored. Back on Earth, President Harathorn watched as the aftermath of the message unfolded. The Volir, now aware of their failure, were struggling to come to terms with their loss. But it wasn't just the Volir who had learned something from this conflict. It was the entire galaxy. "The galaxy will never be the same," Hara said softly, gazing at the stars on the screen before her. "We opened the door for a new era of understanding. The Volir learned that brute strength isn't everything. And the other species will know now that humanity is not just a force to be reckoned with, but a force for peace and innovation." In the days following the broadcast, representatives from other alien species began to make contact. They had questions. They were curious. And they wanted to know how humanity had achieved what seemed impossible. The Volir had been the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had technology that was far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Yet, in the end, it wasn't their weapons or their ships that had won the war. It was humanity's ability to think differently, to adapt, and to outsmart them. Humanity's victory had not been achieved through violence. It had been achieved through intelligence, creativity, and resilience. And now those values were being recognized by species all across the galaxy. Captain Lyra Zhao, who had played a key role in the planning and execution of the strategy, stood beside President Thorne as they received messages from the alien leaders. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Zhao said with a smile. "Not just the victory, but the way the galaxy is starting to view us. They're starting to see what makes humanity so special." Hara nodded. "It's more than just winning a war. It's about changing perceptions. We've shown them that we can think our way through any challenge. And that's something no one can ignore." The Volir, on the other hand, were in disarray. Their empire, once a powerful force in the galaxy, was now on the brink of collapse. The human message had struck a blow not just to their fleet, but to their pride. They had underestimated humanity's potential, and now they were facing the consequences. General Korath, once a fierce leader, had retreated to Volir Prime, where he stood before a council of his peers. The mood was grim. The Volir, who had once dominated the galaxy, were now faced with the reality that they had lost to a species they had thought weak and insignificant. "This is unprecedented," Korath said, his voice filled with frustration. "We were outsmarted, and now the galaxy will look at us with contempt." One of the council members spoke up, his voice cautious. Perhaps it is time to rethink our approach. Perhaps we need to learn from the humans rather than continue to fight them. Koreth's eyes narrowed. Learn from them. They're a species that has barely begun to explore the stars. How could we possibly learn from them? But the council member was firm. It is not their technology that defeated us. It was their mind. Their ability to think differently, to see beyond the obvious. That is something we have never valued. And now, it is something we must consider. As the Voliere debated their next steps, the rest of the galaxy was changing. The message humanity had sent had spread far and wide. And slowly, the perception of humanity was shifting. No longer were they seen as a fragile young species at the mercy of the galaxy's more powerful races. They were now seen as equals, creators, thinkers, and strategists who could stand shoulder to shoulder with any species in the universe. On Earth, life was returning to normal. But the impact of the war would last forever. Humanity had proven that even against overwhelming odds, they could prevail. And it wasn't through violence or destruction. It was through intellect, creativity, and unity. President Thorne looked out at the stars once more, knowing that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's potential. And soon, other species would come to Earth, not as conquerors, but as collaborators. They would seek out humanity's wisdom, and in turn, humanity would share its discoveries. The message humanity had sent to the Voliere was more than just a warning. It was a testament to the power of human ingenuity. It was a message to the entire galaxy that humanity had arrived, not with weapons or ships, but with something far more powerful, the ability to shape their own future. And as Horus stood there, watching the stars, she knew that the next chapter of human history was just beginning. The legacy of humanity would be one of unity, understanding, and the unshakable belief that anything was possible.